I, 27-year-old female, have been with my husband, 29-year-old male, for 7 years. I remember that early in our relationship, one of the first things he expressed insecurity about was his nose, specifically about its width. He never wanted surgery, but thinks his nose is too big for his face. I never thought that true, and for a long time, I wondered where he'd gotten that idea from. Then I met his mother, and all my doubts went out the window. I don't hate her, but the woman complains about everything. And she seems particularly interested in criticizing her sons. Barely anything about my husband or his older brother is good enough for her, and if it is, she is quick to imply they don't deserve it. According to my brother-in-law, that behavior didn't start until father-in-law passed about 8 years ago, so they don't usually hold it against her. But to me, it seems like she legitimately doesn't want her children to be happy. Most times we talk to her, my husband ends up devastated. She constantly complains about me, his job, our apartment, and his appearance. She has, on more than one occasion, suggested he get a nose job. That tends to upset him, so I always try to shut that down as quickly as possible. We got married in early May. The photos were ready about 2 months later, and we created a shared album on Google Photos for our friends and family, including mother-in-law. I got pregnant during our honeymoon. Can't recommend Dubrovnik enough, and I'm now 24 weeks along. We've had problems with mother-in-law concerning my pregnancy. We're having a boy, and she had a breakdown because she wanted a girl that forced us to put her on an info diet. That was 2 months ago, and she has since improved her behavior. Because of that, we said yes when she invited us to go to a mall near her place to shop for baby clothes last Saturday. My husband had an emergency at work and ended up not coming, but we still managed to have a good time. When we were done, she invited me back to her place. I hadn't been there in a while, and I quickly saw that she'd gotten some of our wedding pictures up on the wall. I instantly noticed something was wrong with them, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was yet. My mother-in-law saw what I was looking at and proudly announced that she'd gotten someone to fix his nose. In other words, she gave her son a Photoshop nose job. On his wedding pictures, I couldn't believe it. I never thought she'd stoop so low. It wasn't even a good nose job. It was so bad that my husband's face didn't look real. He looked like a Ken doll, and not in the hot Ryan Gosling way. Mother-in-law must have seen how mad I got, because she instantly tried to defend herself. She tried to make the point that her son deserved to look his best on his wedding day, and I should have convinced him to get the real nose job before our ceremony. I made up an excuse to leave, but I could tell she knew the real reason. She's been calling and texting me almost every day since. I've been ignoring her, but she's always either apologizing, accusing me of overreacting, or begging me not to tell my husband. I know it seems trivial, but I'm outraged. And the more I think about it, the more disgusted I get. I could never imagine doing something like that to my child. I haven't told my husband yet, mostly because we've both been busy with work this week, but also because I have no idea how to. His mother was finally starting to be a better person around him and his brother, and I know it will break his heart to find out about this. I don't know what to do. I have to tell him, but I can't figure out how. I know he loves his mother, and I don't want to damage whatever relationship they still have. Mother-in-law also mentioned she intended to send the improved pictures to some of her relatives, so I have to find a way to shut that down. So how can I tell my husband his mother photoshopped his face on our wedding pictures? More importantly, what would be the most peaceful way to do it? Update. First of all, I want to clarify that not telling my husband what his mother did was never an option. She wouldn't remove the pictures from her house unless I either told him or threatened her. Had I done the latter, she could use that against me in the future or even imply I agreed with her. Plus, he was bound to find out at some point, and I knew it would be better if it came from me. I asked how to do it, not whether I should. So I sat him down last Saturday and broke the news. I explained what the pictures were and mother-in-law's excuses for them. I also showed him the text she'd sent me since my visit. The whole conversation, I was calm and straightforward, but made it very clear that not only did mother-in-law's actions completely disgust me, but I never agreed with her about his appearance. He's the most gorgeous man I've ever met, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with his nose. I also made sure to point out that the Photoshop nose made him look like front-facing Phineas from Phineas, Ferb, and mother-in-law needs to get her eyes checked, if she really thought it looked good. I thought the news would hurt him. And I was right. He didn't cry or anything, but I could see it in his face. The odd but common combination of disappointment and acceptance. He knew his mother wouldn't change, but still had some hope. It was almost heartbreaking to watch. But for the first time in a while, he seemed to believe me when I said his nose was normal. He told me that now that he knew just how ridiculous mother-in-law was willing to be, her opinion meant a lot less to him. So even though he's hurt, he feels stronger than ever. As many of you suggested, I told him that he was free to approach the situation however he pleased, but I don't want to be around his mother anymore. Most importantly, I don't want her around our son or any other kids we might have. Not only because of the guilt-tripping tantrums that have become her standard behavior, but also because of the way she treats the people she's supposed to love. I know she loves her family, but I doubt she knows how love works. If she's willing to treat her sons like this, I fully expect her to be even worse to her grandchildren. In the end, my husband and I decided we're going very low contact with mother-in-law until the holidays. Some of his relatives are throwing a party the week before Christmas, and she'll be there. We thought about skipping it, but he has cousins he hasn't seen in years coming for the party. He's been looking forward to seeing them for months, and it doesn't feel fair to let mother-in-law ruin his excitement. After the holidays, we'll decide how to proceed. Regardless, she won't be allowed to see our son at the hospital when he's born. And once we bring him home, she won't be left alone with the baby. It doesn't matter how much she tries to improve, that is not something we're willing to budge on. In spite of everything, my husband doesn't want to cut ties with his mother, and I understand that. Even if he wanted to, he can't go fully no contact without cutting off the rest of his maternal family as well, which he is firmly against. What works best for now is to treat her like Domino's Pizza. She exists, and that's fine, but we're not getting involved until she actually improves. I also decided to tell some of my own family about this, and everyone I've talked to agrees that mother-in-law went over the line. My father is a narcissist who I'm mostly low contact with due to his entitled behavior. Most recently, he tried to make me disinvite his ex from my wedding so he could bring his mistress. And even he was offended on my husband's behalf. And if even my mediocre, respect your elders, father thinks your children are right about you being a jerk, you've probably gone too far. We talked to my brother-in-law, and he's the one who informed mother-in-law of our decision. She didn't take the news well. She's now trying to call both me and my husband and keeps texting apologies and promises to take the pictures down. We're ignoring her. Brother-in-law visited her yesterday, and apparently the pictures are gone. She believed that was enough for us to forgive her, but he clarified that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. Before anyone calls us dramatic, this isn't just about the Photoshop. This is about the damage she's caused in both her sons' lives. I was abused in a similar fashion in my teens by Dad's ex, and I refuse to allow my child to grow up believing he's anything less than beautiful. Same goes for my husband. That's all. Again, thank you guys. I took the final for an engineering class this morning. Usually 1 or 2 people will go to the bathroom during class, however, for totally unknown reasons. About half of the class needed to use the restroom during the exam. Obviously, a vast majority of them were looking up the answers on their phones. This irritated me, but I just stayed focused and barely finished since it was a hard exam. I remembered that there was one particular problem that was only barely related to the stuff we went over in class, where part A was fairly easy, but I had no idea how to do part B. I didn't fret over it too much though, since that part was only 5 points out of 100. Well, our professor, who was on the older side, and I would have thought was somewhat ignorant of technology, sent us an email, just now explaining his diabolical plan to catch cheaters. Many of the students in this class use Sheg, a website that has answers to lots of homework questions if you're not familiar. To be fair, I have an account too, though I only used it for studying and checking homework solutions. Anyway, he explained that he was tired of people going to the bathroom and looking up answers on their phones. So he made the question I mentioned earlier as a trap. He purposely made part B impossible to solve, and about a month before the final, he got a T with a Chegg account to ask the exact question, which was distinctly worded to be unique. He then created his own check account and answered the question with a nonsense solution that seems right at first glance, but is actually fundamentally flawed and very unlikely that someone would make the same assumptions and mistakes independently. He said that out of 99 exams, 14 of them fell for the trap, and that everyone who had his wrong solution on their exam was given a 0 and reported to the university for violating the academic honor pledge they signed on the front. He also sent an email to all the other professors in our department giving them the list of cheaters. Edit. I forgot to mention he gave full credit on Part B of the question to everyone else. Edit 2. Hi guys, I'm writing this 5 months after the initial post. I'm glad this post is getting attention again, and I'm once again receiving messages from people wanting to get in touch with the professor or students from the class. So now that this post has run its initial course, I'll burst everyone's bubble by admitting that I mostly made this story up. It's based on a real incident that happened in my department a couple years ago, but I wasn't in the class personally. I only heard about it third hand from someone I didn't know that well. So while the general plot and end result of the story is true, I changed some details to keep the professor and school anonymous and took creative liberty in writing it from a first-person viewpoint. Unfortunately, the part about my department letting students go to the bathroom during exams with their phones was true, and is still true to this day. And to my knowledge, the incident this is based on is the only time that a professor actually took a stand against this crappy policy. So yeah, I don't know the professor personally since the class he taught is not part of my program's curriculum. So I won't put anyone in touch with him or anyone else who knows about the real incident and could expose his identity. Before anyone reports this for being fake, I will once again stress that while I changed the details, the actual events played out in a similar way, and the real professor did in fact get his revenge on the cheaters. I was 18 and in my first managerial job, swing shift manager at a fast food burger joint. Like every place, we had a couple of usuals who were jerks for the sake of being jerks. One of them, an over-the-top, egregiously aggressive woman who found fault with everything, would go ballistic if you so much as failed to address her as ma'am in every sentence. Things came to a head when she was so rude to one of our counter clerks that she made the girl cry. I told the girl to go back to the break room and take a breather, and then calmly informed the woman that she was no longer welcome in our store. That triggered the nuclear option. I waited for the screaming and cursing to stop, waved her to the door, and then watched as she left. I sent corporate her CC number and license plate info, and they sent her a "you're banned from all the stores" letter, filed it with the local PD, and told us to call the cops immediately if she ever showed up in our store again. Which she did. A few weeks later, she showed up ready to launch into another tirade for whatever imagined offense might occur. We politely kicked her out despite her screaming that the do not trespass order was fake, wasn't legal, didn't apply to her, her lawyer said. It happened again a couple of times, but eventually her luck broke and there happened to be 2 cops on their dinner break in the restaurant. I was on shift that night. And I can tell you that I have rarely been so satisfied as when I showed the officers the order, identified the woman as the person referred to in it, told them about the frequent return visits, and then watched them arrest her on the spot. Best of all, I never had to testify. She went totally ballistic and scratched a cop's face. No need to book her for trespassing when resist and arrest and cop assault were so convenient. Now, the vast majority of this story is instant karma. So why am I posting on here? The answer is simple. After they hauled her away, I noticed that her car was still in our lot. Oh yes. That call to the towing company was the most satisfying 2 minutes of my young life. Sure, I could have just let it sit there until she came back for it. But make my register clerk cry? Yeah, enjoy your trip to the impound lot. Man,